This is the view from inside Troop 68's cabin, looking out the window at the most important feature we had, which was our outhouse. Our cabin was the first one as you came into camp on the right-hand side. Now down in the center of the camp, looking up towards our cabin, and as we're panning in, this is the cabin that the Explorer Post had. Al Beal, I don't know their number, but they were from Lancaster also, and this is standing down in the center of the camp area, panning around. This cabin was at the far end of the camp, the other side of the pond, and some more shots of that. The This is looking back over the camp from out away from the camp, and this is the water lines leading in. This is the pond when it had been drained. We let it drain every year, and I think we're just starting to fill it up. But it was fed from a spring, and we got the water for the camp from that spring also. The valve to turn the water on was a couple hundred yards up above the camp, and this is the water starting to flow into the pond. And I know some of the guys swam in it at that time. This is the sign-in shack. This was the area down in the center, and this is looking from a distance. This is a close-up of the sign-in shack. This was the area where I almost got bit by the rattlesnake after I came down to sign out. And this is a picture of our cabin from down in the area of the pond. That's our blue duster there. The entrance to Camp Nick Williams was through this chain link gate across the driveway at the front. Each troop had their own padlock. The padlocks were connected a series of chains that held the gate closed and locked. If you unlocked any padlock, you could take the chain out, open the gate. So any of the troops that had a cabin had their own individual access to the camp with their own padlock. This is not actually a map of the camp, but it's a diagram of the water layout, the water pipes showing all the cabins. And on the left side of it, there's two cabins. One's marked T599 or Troop 599, and the other Troop 240, which was actually Troop 68 and then 148 when we still were in those troops. That's the entrance to the camp. The road went between those two cabins and then pretty much followed the line where the water pipes are and down into the center of the camp. The center, pretty much the center of the map, where it says Troop 391 and another troop. There's two troops in that cabin. That was the center of the camp, and that's where the sign in and sign out sheets were. And that's a cabin that I actually almost got bit by the rattlesnake right in front of that cabin. And so the water lines then continued on up the hill, and there's a spring, and there was a valve up there that turned the water on for the whole camp. And in the wintertime, when we were up there, we'd have to turn the drain lines on and then turn the spring off, drain all the lines so that the water would run out. And but it still gives a good layout of the camp as it was in about in the 70s, between 1970 and 1982 or 3, which is about the last time I was involved with it. And this is the cabin we had as Troop 68 and later Troop 148. And again, it's was the first cabin on your right side when you drove into the camp. It was up on top of the hill. Directly across from us was the Troop 599 cabin. They were a little bit higher, but these two cabins pretty much overlooked the entire camp. And here's the interior of the cabin, Troop 68 and 148. That's our cook stove, the work table on the left, and then a counter, cabinets, and a sink. We actually had running water in the cabin for dishwashing and so on, from the spring. The stove was a propane stove, and in order to use it, we brought a propane tank like you have on a grill or a camper. We set it on, there was a little porch outside that window. We'd set it up out there and connected up to the stove, so we had all the modern conveniences of any other kitchen. So it was a lot easier than camping out when we were backpacking. And this is still standing in the kitchen area, looking towards the main door, and some of the rest of the kitchen cabinets. Another table we used for working and also for eating when we had a crowd there. And a little area where the scoutmaster generally their lounge, our lounge, and we keep that for our own use. This is another area. The looks like a couple of seats that came out of somebody's van. I don't know where they came from. They were there when we, moved into the cabin, or when I started going up there. And I believe maybe some of us slept on those too. Metal panel on the left side was behind the stove. We had a stove, and the kids called it Oscar, and it was made out of a 55-gallon drum, and was used for heating. We didn't really use it for cooking, but just mainly for heating the cabin when it was cold. And one of the trips, and it may have been when this movie was, or these pictures were taken, somebody had broken in and stole the stove. One of the guys I worked with at Northrop, after that, he built a new one for us out of two 35-gallon drums. So there was a top and a bottom. We had a heat exchanger and a much better stove, and I think he put a plate on top where we could actually do a little cooking or heat water or whatever we wanted to do with it. So we replaced it, when we, after somebody stole the first one, we replaced with one that was custom made by Northrop Aircraft. And this is a picture taken from the center of the kitchen area, looking at one of the benches we used for meals, for eating primarily. And then to the left side of it, dark area would have been the door back to the bunkhouse where there were a lot of bunks where the scouts slept. And somebody had noticed, I had noticed it at first, that there was an electric light bulb. We didn't have electricity in the camp. One time, from reading the history of the camp, they had generators when it was a logging camp and did have the cabins wired. But what we did is we put 12-volt bulbs in those lamps, and we take an automobile battery when we were up there, and there was wires we could hook it to out on that porch, and we could have electric lights if we wanted. We also used lanterns, regular camp lanterns too. So, but I do remember we had electric lights from the 12 volt. And this is a picture looking into the bunk area where the scouts slept. I don't remember how many bunks there were in there. Quite a few. There was a lot of room to sleep, and it looked like they had double mattresses on most of them. Another area that we had to be careful every time we went up there, so we had to go through and make sure there weren't any snakes that had decided to make that home. A lot of areas for them to hide in there. And we did have one in the kitchen, one of the trips where when we first got there, it was a baby rattler. So it was a problem that we had to be aware of all the time. And check the cabin out before everybody started just throwing their stuff in there. And here's a couple of pictures later on after we went into Troop 599. And this is probably the cabin across from us, Troop 599 cabin. This is my friend Bill Singledecker. His son Stephen had joined the Scouts by then. And Jeff, my son Jeff, was in the Scouts by then. But that was one of the trips that Bill was with it. And then the next picture was one where we were cooking out at a grill out there for 599, and that's Bill Singledecker and Joe Racer, Brian Racer's Dave's friend. He'd been in the troop for quite a while, but he was one of the parents that helped us quite a bit on the trips to the cabin or about anywhere we went. And as a final note on this film about Camp Nick Williams, while I was doing this, I did a little research, found a website that for the Camp Nick Williams, and made contact with the only possible contact on the website. And unfortunately, the camp is no longer. I did get a reply from him. His reply was, I wish I had good news. A bunch of motorcycle guys came up years ago, talked the Kitchens into giving them the camp. So I gave it my all, but I couldn't keep up with 40 acres by myself. The fire in 2008 took out our ponds, and I was able to get the swimming pond back working before we lost the camp. So apparently the owners, that was the Kitchens he's referring to, they decided to sell it to somebody else or give it to them, whatever happened. But unfortunately, there is no more Camp Nick Williams. We enjoyed a lot of time up there, but apparently it wasn't used very much towards the end. It was never an official Boy Scout camp or owned by the Boy Scouts, so it was an association that ran it when I was involved in it. I assume that's the way it was to the end.